Welcome to the 9 to 5 Joy podcast. I'm Christine Selby.
And I am Mapi Garcia.
And we're on a mission to make the workplace more joyful.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Today, we are recording our Cliff Notes episode for Robert's interview. And it's already brought up some, I would say, some fire as we were pre-discussing it. Because what we saw in that episode was somebody who was so compelling around the culture that they were building. And it was something that was very intrinsic to Robert. And so I think as we were preparing for this episode, we were thinking about this question. And actually, Mapi, I'm going to let you pose the question because I think it's burning inside of you.
I wrote it down. It is. I'm like, should I talk about this or not? We trust you, our audience. And the reality is we've never posed ourselves as experts. We're not experts in joy. We're learning alongside you. And today I just had this aha moment that I want to explore further with you all. So our question that we came up with was, are you born a chief joy officer or do you become one? It's a very nuanced question, right? Because I think what we have seen is that there are strategies, tools, ways of being that increase joy at the workplace, number one. Number two, there are like individual and sort of cultural or elements that have to do with the interaction between individuals that contribute to it. But today, I just had this light bulb go on around, you just have it. You just have something within you that invites you, makes you curious, makes you determined about connecting authentically with people and sort of making that connection between work and well-being or work and joy, you just have it. Like, and we were discussing before we started recording the fact that I will say all of the guests that we have had in our show this far are people who, independently of the industry where they're at, independently of how big or small the organization is they work on, they just have this core capacity, ability, need, interest, whatever we want to call it, of building joy. And with Robert, it just became so evident to me. He said it himself. He was just like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
It's always been a part of me.
It's always been a part of me. I am a humanistic. So I guess part of why it's challenging to pose this question is because it's kind of the nature and nurture debate where we go, okay, so what if there are people who don't necessarily have that as a priority or as an innate quality, or so can they become the joyful or joy-building CEOs that we're hoping everybody could be?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. I think that there's a good case to be made that, yes, there's something intrinsic about people. And I think some of it could come from an environment, right? Like environment or experiences that you've had that build that intrinsic motivation in you. And I think and maybe it can go the opposite way too. Like you could be intrinsically motivated or oriented towards people and building joy and really elevating the people around you, and then maybe have experiences that I guess that, I don't know, push that down somehow or make that less a part of your journey.
Yeah.
And I also think there's a potential that you could be, that maybe that wasn't something that was in the forefront of who you are. And then you had an experience where you said, this isn't working. Like life isn't working the way that I expected it to, hoped it to, or you had something happen that was really difficult and that actually changes your trajectory and you realize it becomes cultivated inside of you. So
something sort of traumatic or
Right.
or that breaks the pattern and shows you that there is something else.
There's something else that's important.
Meaning joy or well-being is more important than the other things. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in a lot of people's stories that we've talked to, it was something that was important to them, but then they had an experience that brought it to the forefront.
Yes.
So like Rich, for example, he was, really burnt out in his career. And he was like, I'm just going to go to the boundary water. So it was obviously something that was important to him. He just hadn't brought it to the forefront of his career yet. And then that experience made that happen. I think with Wesley, we just saw he had almost a health crisis, right? Which made him realize, okay, this is something that's really important. And then with others, we've just seen how it's always been something important and it's developed from a small seed to something bigger over time.
And I feel that that's also tied with the why and the purpose, right? Because I'm just struggling because I feel like at the end of the day, these are all people who, even though they may have not seen it as clearly before or prioritize it in a way before the change that they had, or before prioritizing it, it was still like part of their personality. Like Wes was starting positive psychology, right? Like that means that he had some interest in learning about humans and, like interacting and, how we behave and where we thrive, right? So I do feel, and same with Rich, even though he went through like experiences that, kind of deviated him from what was important to him, it was kind of a return to the self, right? A return to like the who I am and what my purpose is.
Yeah.
But then that purpose and that who I am is still there. And we could argue that we as humans all have that who I am and what I want at some level, right? Because we all need connection. We all need to feel seen and we all need to, have purpose. We have a lot of, information right now around talking about the importance of purpose. So maybe the way that we need to continue to explore this journey of joy at the workplace is, what are not only some ways in which you can increase joy because you have this strategy or this tool or this thing that you can do, but what is that internal work, which we've heard some people talk about, but what is that internal work that everyone should be doing around what moves you, what is your purpose, and how is that connected to the other humans that you are working with.
Finding your why. Yeah, definitely. I think that's I think it's certainly a theme that we've seen, and something that if isn't addressed, it creates a wall between like you and the real thing, because you can't get there. You definitely can't get there. So I think.
Now, on the other hand, though, I do want to highlight today that, to me, one of the things that was so crystal clear with Robert's interview was, again, we have talked about there is an individual element of joy, and we each are responsible to bring certain things to the table and to have a certain attitude and, just behave a certain way so that we can nurture and facilitate joy. But there is also a lot to be said about how a work culture is maintained and whether there is intentional and consistent investment in well-being. And I think that's something that Robert made crystal clear in our interview. And please go back and listen to that episode if you haven't, because there is so much that we've learned from it. But it's this idea of, if you are with a CEO who doesn't really seem to have been born with it and doesn't really seem to be interested in going inwards and finding their why and, connecting to people, maybe you are in the wrong place, to be honest, because the cultivation and maintenance of a joyful work environment is very dependent on who you have in your leadership team and how those people are investing resources in supporting that type of environment.
Right. And I think how I would build on that is we always have to be finding people who bring the best out of us, right? Like whether it's work, whether it's our friends, whether it's our faith environment, whatever it is, we have to be finding the people in our life who are going to build that, like are going to be a part of pushing us towards joy, right? Pushing us towards like the best version of the best parts of us. And so I could imagine a scenario where you're in a large company and maybe the CEO doesn't have it, but you've got a manager who does. And for that part of your journey, it's a good time to be there, right?
Yep.
You know, so I think, but looking at that larger principle of the people that are closest to me, the people that are having the most influence on my day-to-day environment, are they people that are building a culture of joy? Are they people that are building a culture where I can thrive and I can be connected to the people around me and I'm not in like a, you know, hyper competitive space or something like that? But is it bringing out the things in me that are going to elevate me as a leader? And I think if the answer to that question is no, then you really need to be thinking about, how do I move myself into an environment where I'm being supported, where I'm being brought into a culture that brings out, I feel like I'm being cliche saying brings out the best in me, but you know, culture and environment we know has such a huge influence on everything. That's really what this podcast is about. So, there is a piece for all of us individually to say that.
But I'm going to push back a little bit on what you said, because I do agree 100% on it is about the environment that you have around you. And, you know, your manager plays an absolute key role. And we have seen how managers hold the key to joy in the workplace. However, it's very difficult. And we've seen it also in the Deloitte study. It's very difficult for managers to behave in that way or to support to a certain extent, even if they want to, and even if they maybe have some skills that allow them to, if you don't have a sort of a broader environment that truly supports that.
Right.
And that's where I almost feel like, you know, there are companies in this country, in every industry, I will bet money on it, that are taking these, you know, need to develop and sustain and create well-being and joyful work environments everywhere. Like and we have seen examples. That's what we're doing right now, right? We're doing case studies. So I really will invite people to just take a close look at where they're at, how they feel about where they're at, what does their immediate environment looks like, and whether their, you know, larger place of work is truly supportive of well-being. Because if it's not, you know, I don't think it's a bad thing to evaluate, to think about, and to, you know, seek for those places that do support that, because those are the places that we want succeeding at the end of the day. You know, like when we see a story like Robert's, you're like, it's incredible that he's been so successful, and the more success to him. And he was even talking about other companies coming to Colombia and doing similar things to what he's doing and sort of prioritizing well-being in a similar way. And he was like that's incredible. It's moving the needle in the same direction that we want it to move. So, I think that it's like this sort of balance between what I have control on, what is immediately impacting me, but also like, is this company truly aligned with, you know, my right to work in a joyful work environment? Because now I think it's a right. It's not just like, we want to build it because it's fun. No. We should all have access to that. So, yeah. What do you think?
I think I mean, I agree. And I also think that every situation is different. So I think you have to really you have to have a good feel for like your journey and where you are on that journey. And there's seasons. I think that any environment you're in, you can learn from it and grow from it. So I would say, like, I guess my thinking is I don't want to put people in a position where they're feeling like, I got to get out of here right now. And maybe that's, but maybe like the best thing for them is actually to stick it out there for a year and figure some things out,
I don't want to put you in a position of I have to get out of here. Which is, but I think that both approaches are completely valid, and it's up to every individual to, make their choices. But if there is something that I've kind of played with a lot especially the last years of my life is, like you really have to be where you are fulfilled in a way. And that doesn't mean that you're going to find the perfect place immediately or that, right?
Right.
But this idea of like, and I know that you're not saying this, right? But this idea of like sucking it up in the meantime so that I can get whatever, like I just don't buy that anymore. Maybe I'm more of a Gen Z now. Never know.
All right. So you may have just listened to our most casual conversational Cliff Notes episode yet. Mm-hmm. This is kind of how we always talk about these things.
We do,
because we're learning and dissecting and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and we're happy that we were able to invite you in. So let us know what you think. I hope that you go back to Robert's episode. It was really amazing. And then that you've had a chance to see all the episodes from this season. We have amazing case studies, and we are very, very proud to be able to bring those to you. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
And until next time, spread the joy.
Mm-hmm.